Okay, hi, it's Paula. This is the Common Book Show, and I'm here today with Nessa remotely, and Richard, and James, and of course my son Tom on drums. And today, because I was busy with other things, I decided to read something I wrote that I came across the other day. And I call this piece, This Is Not a Pipe. Okay. The more technology speeds up communication and puts the world at my fingertips, the less time I have to enjoy it. When email first became popular, I thought it would revolutionize interpersonal communication. I could instantly contact people across the globe, and we could have meaningful interaction. I used to write letters. I would get a letter from a friend telling me about her life in Hong Kong or back home in Buffalo when I lived in New York City. I would go to the mailbox and feel the sparkle of excitement as I carried the letter to the house to read the words of a friend. I'd carefully open the envelope and pull out the stationery or lined notebook paper. I'd fix myself a cup of coffee or tea and sit in a comfortable chair to read what my friend had written. I could hear their voices in the words, see their hand gestures, and know where they would smile and where they would cry. I'd imagine the places they would describe as carefully as possible. A tea house in Shanghai, a dance club on Franklin. It was like reading a novel by someone I knew. I could get to know them better by the choice of a word or an interjection like, "I'm not making this up." The residue of the cities would be on the envelope and paper, a scent or an imagined atmosphere. I would put the letter on my lap and let the images swirl around my head until one would be unclear, and I'd lift the letter to read a second time and then a third time until it was almost memorized. I'd carry that letter in my mind when I was composing my own response to my friend. I would savor it on the train to work, at my desk while I was supposed to be concentrating on something mundane, or it would appear in my dreams until one day I would sit down and write my own letter. I would be careful to answer the questions put to me in the letter. I would also be careful to describe things in detail, relay the humor of a moment, talk about the outcomes and fears that are built into all human interactions. It would take me time to compose this masterpiece because while I was writing, I would picture my friend's reaction to the words on the page and stop to smile and think about my friend. When I was finally through, I would prepare the envelope, pick out a stamp that I knew my friend would like. Then there was the trip to the post office, since I had a crazy idea that if I threw this work of fine literature into a mailbox, it would somehow get stuck to the inside, or the postman would neglect to empty this one because he was having a hard day or a hard week. All of this would take the better part of a month. Then there was the anticipation of the next letter, where this process would start all over again. Now, with time-saving applications like email, I get an email which, for the most part, is not filled with interesting information, but perfunctory. If I want to know what my friends are up to, I look at their Facebook page, which shows me the face that they show the world. When I return an email, I answer the question and maybe give some information about my life. Within minutes, I get an email back from my friend. Nothing of interest has happened to me in the last 2 minutes. I have nothing to say unless we are having a conversation. The conversation is not a letter, and it is not a permanent record of our relationship. My email is flooded with offers from stores, information I did not want or will never want. I spent 15 minutes sorting through the barrage of subject lines until I find the one or two important things from friends. Often, it's just a forwarded email with jokes or images, and I certainly could have lived without that. On Facebook, I'm sucked into the minutia of long-ago acquaintances who I had given up for dead, people who were not meaningful in my life before the introduction of this time whirlpool. I know their opinions and their politics, how many children and grandchildren they have, and I do not have time to keep everyone I've met in my life. There's a process. Every time you work somewhere, go to school someplace, or go on vacation, you meet a load of people. By natural selection, you decide who is worth keeping and who is not. Now I have over 600 friends, some of whom I knew in person, who pull at my precious time. I know this sounds cynical, but I don't really care about most of them. I stay on Facebook to connect to a few, but somehow my village has become a boom town. I waste my last few moments on Earth scrolling through other people's business or checking sites that I thought might inspire me. Instead, they drain the life out of me. I get up from my seat and I'm stiff. I could have gone for a walk or had coffee with a real friend. Now I come to my smartphone. It is neither smart nor is it really a phone, since its main purpose is to connect me to advertisers. I'm expected to use my dexterity to navigate a touchscreen keyboard. Every time I touch the keyboard, something spectacular happens, and I have no idea how I did it or how to undo it. When I try to make a call or answer a call, I invariably touch the wrong thing and cannot complete the action without frustration, to the point that when I finally reach the person I want to speak to, I'm a raging ball of irritation. Advertisements are ubiquitous, and I must wait for what seems like an eternity to get to the information I requested. I was told I would learn to love my phone. I do not. I resent the man who sold it to me for convincing me that I would no longer be able to use a flip phone because the airwaves would be changed so that only smartphones would work. I've been sucked into a world I did not want, but now I have apps that seem important, like my Weight Watchers barcode scanner and the ability to get directions when I'm sent off on the wrong route by a printed MapQuest. I reluctantly adjust to the phone, but even after a year, it's still the enemy. I watch people sitting together at a table. They're not communicating with each other. They are communicating with their phones. What on earth is so important that you must stare at a device instead of into the eyes of someone who is important to you? This is a bad sign for humanity. My husband says that if I was younger, this would be second nature to me. He's right. I wouldn't know the joy of receiving a letter from a friend. I'd be compelled to stare at my phone while spending non-quality time with friends. I would roll my eyes when an older person would ask me how to take a photo with my phone. I would be satisfied to stare at the faces on the screen and watch them live their lives out of some sort of moment-to-moment still lives of birthdays, dinners out, and walks on the beach. In this case, I'm glad I know something else. I'm glad that I realize a photo of a friend is not a friend. Just like Rene Magritte foretold with his brilliant think piece, this is not a pipe. It was only a painting of a pipe. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's my contribution. Anybody have any thoughts about that?
So the parallel is the world you see through your phone is like the Magritte painting.
Magritte painting, where he paints a picture of a pipe and says and writes on the painting, "This is not a pipe."
So it's sort of like along the lines of, there was another piece like that. It was called Fountain, and there was a toilet, and it was from the Dada movement as well.
Yeah.
Remember
So
that one, Duchamp?
Yeah, I don't think that was. Oh yeah, that might have been Duchamp because
There
that's
was.
yeah. But yeah, so that's the. I mean, this is not a pipe. It took me a while when I first was taking an art class to understand what the hell. What do you mean this isn't a pipe? Of course it's a pipe, And then I finally figured out it's not a pipe. It's a. So this I wrote
What
this.
is it then?
It's a picture of a pipe. So I wrote this after about a year after I got my smartphone. I was still struggling. I mean now yeah, I do. I tend to look things up if I need some information on the run, and I can maneuver it better. I can manipulate it in a more successful way, but I still find today. I had to stop someplace and pick something up, and as I was waiting, there was a young couple standing next to me, and they were waiting as well. So, and they were on their phones. They weren't paying attention to each other. They weren't talking to each other.
They were waiting to do something.
They were waiting for food. Okay.
Oh, and they decided to spend the time each on their separate phones.
Yeah. And I was talking to a crazy lady with a dog because that's more my speed. But So, yeah, that was just something that I came across, and I'm trying to stay organized with. I have writing in all these different folders on my computer, and I got to make sure that I don't lose track of things. I was looking for one story that I wrote about getting married to my husband when I was pregnant with my daughter.
You mean you already wrote it and now you're trying to find it?
I was trying to find it, so I'm looking for words that I think would be unique to that story. But I don't think it might still be in my Mac stuff, because I've got a folder with Mac stuff that I can convert, and I might have to go, because if I search, it doesn't come up if it's in the Mac stuff. Yeah, so that was that little egg computer that you helped me buy way back when.
Oh, back when you lived on Schiller.
Yeah.
There are people now who have lost the ability to have conversation.
Absolutely.
I have a friend who we didn't believe that we were speaking to her whenever she would text or email. Because in person, this was the least verbal person you knew.
Uh-huh.
You never got more than a 3-4 word sentence out of this woman.
Mm-hmm.
But you'd get emails that seemed like a college thesis and text messages that went on like a wall of word salad. And it's like, this can't be her. This must be her
Yeah.
boyfriend impersonating her.
There are people who just who I communicate better in writing than I do in speaking, because I will often search for a word. And when you're writing, you can stop and you can either try to find the word in your head, or you can put another word down that is similar, and you can look on the thesaurus for the word that you actually wanted. And it's much easier to be clear and
Well, this wasn't
And-
that. This was to the point of like a phobia. I went to visit her in the hospital one day. So I'm specifically here to keep you company.
mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to have a conversation with her. And she's doing this nonverbal thing. So I decide, all right, let's give this a try. So I pick up my phone and I send her a text.
While she's in the bed in the hospital.
While she's sitting next to me in the bed of the hospital. And she says, did you just text me? I'm like, well, that's the only way you ever talk. And she sent me this text back. And I'm like, okay. So it really is
Wow.
her who's texting and emailing. She just can't manage more than 4 words at a time.
Wow. What do you think of that, Richard?
It sounds like almost like shyness, doesn't it?
Yeah, but
Like people who stutter, there's a thing about fear that they're either not going to say the wrong words or something like that.
yeah,
So maybe she has something like, I can't say everything that's in my mind, so I'll just abbreviate it.
yeah. Did you ever notice that if she had a speech impediment or anything?
No, it really, if anything, it was just, like you said, like a mental shyness kind of thing. Because I'd known her since the late 80s, early 90s.
Uh-huh.
And she was never very verbal. But when we got to the point of having phone notes and emails,
You found out that she was a different person.
yeah, she's got this whole other mental capacity that no one ever got to see, and you still didn't because you couldn't believe this was the same person.
That sounds like a good premise for a short story.
That can also being
Yeah.
nonverbal is also a component of autism often.
Yeah. Do you think there may have been a chance she was on the spectrum?
It's possible.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, I've worked with people with autism, and although they're very, the people I supported in employment usually had Asperger's, and they were very intelligent, but their communication skills. They couldn't make eye contact. How was her eye contact?
That was okay. She just couldn't look at you and talk.
Wow. So, were you saying something else about the idea of artificial communication?
About living in the world of social media.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fascinated by people who do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, look at this cartoon. I find this to be very revealing.
Okay.
All right. Let's see here. Honey, come quick. The guy in the comment section just solved the Middle East crisis. So this person is so absorbed in this whole culture of online communication
Yeah,
that he almost thinks like
it's real.
that you can have insights in this thing that will apply to the real world.
Yeah, yeah. It's not. You know, I told you that I'm detoxing off the news, right? I told you
You did.
Since the election, I have stopped paying attention, and I got to tell you, I feel a lot better. I feel clear-headed. I'm not stressing as much because any station you watch. I mean, I'm not a Fox person, but I watch CNN and sometimes MSNBC. It's all opinion and the same thing over and over and over
Yeah.
again. It's
Over and over, same thing. They drill it into your head so many times. They want that
and
by
it,
repeating it. They want it to become reality.
and so I feel now. I said, this is pretty good. I got some mental space going on here, and I get
part of why-
enough information from the talk show monologues because they always hit on the really important things that happened that day, and they say it in a light way, and they only say it once, so I'm not getting inundated.
Part of living in Hawaii that was so great was you were insulated from a lot of that. There was a totally different culture, and living out in the rainforest in the middle of nowhere, you weren't slammed with it as much as you are on the mainland here. It's like almost impossible to escape here.
Yeah,
And it was
well,
easier to ignore there
you're still getting all the main news stations, aren't you? I mean,
if you want.
if you want, exactly,
But
and
it's
that's
very,
just
but it's not as prevalent. I know it's easier to avoid there for some reason.
well, it's nice outside. You can go outside and play.
Yeah.
The land of 85 degrees and a chance of rain.
Yeah. And so I'm feeling now Greg and I are still meditating every day. And between that and the lack of news, I feel a lot better. I feel liberated.
Most of the news isn't even news. It's called programming because that's what it is. It's programming. That's the intent.
Who was it last week that said the thing about Clinton being the one who said who passed legislation saying that cable news can be entertainment? Was it you that said that?
Yeah.
I have been thinking about that all week. I've been thinking about that one small fact all week. That was the worst thing of his presidency. And you said there was one other thing you said that he was responsible for that I didn't know.
Banks used to have to keep savings accounts separate, not use that money for investment.
Oh,
He let them combine it.
yeah.
And then came the 2008 crash, which
Yeah.
that's what happened. They were using savings money to invest in bad investments.
I mean, that is. Did you read a book about his policies, or is it something that you just knew about from the time?
Well, I found out about this through multiple sources. Like every Saturday, Ralph Nader does an hour show, and it's been on many of the Ralph Nader shows. It's been on many of the daily Democracy Now! Shows that I listen to. I listen to a lot of commentary from the left.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to keep myself I have to let my mind rest. It's taken a lot of slings and arrows through this whole process of the election. And
I mean, it's interesting when you think of Clinton's presidency.
uh-huh.
He claimed if he got elected, he would unify the country.
Mm-hmm.
And he wound up compromising away so many ideas, like the thing about television news,
Yeah.
and the thing about banks, and the thing about it's okay for factories to set up a factory across the border in Mexico.
Oh yeah, NAFTA.
Yeah, don't worry, it won't affect American jobs.
Oh, he campaigned that he was against NAFTA. That was a Bush program. And when he was elected, he went both feet in on NAFTA.
Yeah.
Did he give a rationalization?
No, don't have to.
Well, it should be an interesting 4 years. I am very
If anyone survives it,
I'm
yeah.
very interested in watching how this whole thing evolves or devolves. Some interesting picks on the, for the cabinet, and I'm not really.
It's like it reminds me of a DC comic book with like some big hall of villains, and they're all real weird, and they all have like these strange personalities, but now they run the world.
Yeah. Dessa, did you ever watch Veep? Veep, VEEP? Okay. It was on, it was on HBO. And it was, Julia Louis-Dreyfus was the vice president. And it was really a funny show. And the thing is, that show, it made the presidency seem, a presidency and the vice presidency, it kind of showed all of the dealings and all the foul language and things that happen in D.C. that we don't even think about. And she said one time, she said, we tried to come up with the most ridiculous scenarios. She says, but the scenarios seem to have gotten past us. But it's a really, if you have a chance to see it, it's a hilarious show. And she is so, she uses such foul language and the people, and it's so, and she says that now real politics are worse
Than her show.
than the show that they tried to make ridiculous. So, I don't know.
It's like the Babylon Bee. It's difficult to satirize politics now because there's nothing that you can say that would be too fantastical to be true.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So anyway,
Ooh, what's up with the screen with the cursor here?
Oh,
Is that what people are seeing?
Yeah, we see a black screen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
me too.
No, that's not what the people see.
okay. All
Okay,
right.
thank you.
All right. So, so what do you have on your list today?
I'd like to comment on what you just talked about.
Okay.
Okay, so this week you mentioned that Trump was making picks.
Yeah.
Okay, so he picked Matt Gaetz, RFK Jr., Pete Hegseth, a commentator from Fox News,
I know.
and Tulsi Gabbard, all to run agencies in which they have had zero experience, so they don't know the ropes of any of these agencies, and they have zero managerial experiences in managing an agency.
He's dismantling the government.
I like what David Brooks said on PBS last night. He said, it's like he sent in those people into those agencies to be agents of chaos. Almost like he's trying to destroy the government
Yeah, he is.
by putting people in charge that are the least qualified.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's in league with Putin. Putin.
He is. He gets all his ideas from him. He's friends with him.
Putin would like
look at what
nothing
Putin
better.
did, look at all the stuff Trump has done, and Putin did it first. It's like he gets his playbook from him.
Yeah.
He's years behind, but you can see what the future might be based on what Putin has done.
And that guy, that commentator for Fox News, he wants to bomb everywhere. I mean, some of the things I saw on the late night, monologues, because they use some footage, he talks about going in and bombing Iraq, Iran, anywhere, like just going in and just destroying it.
Yeah, and one of the selling points of Trump was supposedly he wasn't a hawk and he would keep America out of wars. That was one of the supposed selling
Yeah,
points
so keep
that
America
they
out
kept
of wars
giving.
and just blow up the rest of the world.
Right. Well, still, he's going to blow up things. That's not what was promised
Yeah.
or inferred.
Yeah, so anyway, I don't,
Now, there's another interesting wrinkle on this Putin connection. So Putin's in charge of the television broadcasting on Russian television.
yes.
This week, Russian television found photos of Melania from when she was modeling in the nude. They're putting them on Russian TV. What's the motive? Like, what message is Putin trying to send by doing that? Is he telling Trump, don't get out of line?
Well, if he's already putting them online,
Yeah.
and I don't think, you know what, I can
That's probably to
imagine.
put Trump in his place.
I can imagine that Trump does not care about that. Yeah, look at her. She's mine. I'm proud of that. I'm proud of her. I get to sleep with her. He doesn't have any, that. I mean, it might be embarrassing for her, but maybe not. I mean, she
One person commented, "Well, Trump probably doesn't care because the marriage has died."
it looks pretty dead. But
She didn't move to Washington; she stayed in Florida.
well, yeah, she's going to remain. She's only going to
Been
come
there,
for,
done that.
and I mean, I'm surprised that. See, Putin, to me, it seems like he likes to have things up his sleeve so he can control Trump.
Yeah.
But this is something, if it's not up his sleeve anymore, it's out in the open. I mean,
Maybe
what
it's
he
sort
wants
of
to.
like a-
Well, other
does
people.
he want to embarrass him?
That's other speculation is Putin is messaging to Trump. I've got worse things on you.
Ooh,
So if I'd be willing to do this to your wife, imagine what I'd be willing to do to you.
Wow.
it's basically a message, I think, of Putin trying to say, "Hey, Trump, you're my bitch. You better stay in line."
I agree with that, Nessa. You definitely, and of course, Trump. Yeah. Oh.
Oh, shut up, Rambo.
Yeah. So anyway, I really didn't want to get off on politics. Do you have something that's non-political to discuss?
Wow, that's a tough one. Do you consider?
I know it's been a bad week.
Do you
Where
consider
your
this?
healthcare is cut.
Do you
Can I
con-
just say on this thing about picks? I mean, is the typical thing is what happened with Donald Rumsfeld. Jimmy Carter had given a conditional approval to aspartame, and the rules were that it was only to be allowed to be used in cold processed things, never to be heated above, if I remember correctly, 85 degrees.
Oh, that's pretty low. Yeah.
So it could be used in soft drinks and, say, cake frosting or
They don't use heat to make soft drinks. I don't know.
no. But the
Don't
problem
they?
is that once you bottle it and put it in a delivery truck, the truck's not refrigerated. And so the product can go above 85 degrees sitting in the truck. But that doesn't matter because the minute that you drink it,
Goes back down.
it's already above 85 degrees with the temperature of your body.
Oh,
Ooh,
So
interesting.
the Carter administration said the conditional approval for aspartame was 85 degrees or less, and we will revisit whether this is going to go full or if we're going to rescind our temporary conditional approval. Sirles Corporation went nuts, put all their money behind Reagan. Reagan gets elected. He names Donald Rumsfeld to the cabinet. And the second thing that Ronald Reagan did as president was to give aspartame full approval and revoke the Carter administration's conditional approval because it was going to be completely outlawed because they found out that, among other things, pilots, for instance, were warned that they can't drink diet drinks because one of the potential side effects is temporary blindness.
Do they still use aspartame and
It depends on what drink you're using. It could be aspartame, could be Splenda, could be saccharin.
What's Splenda's chemical name? Do you know?
I don't.
Sucralose is what they call it, but it's an
I see
organochloride.
aspartame all over the place in diet soda.
Yeah, I mean, there's two different formulas for Pepsi. There's one that's Diet Pepsi, and there's one that's Pepsi Zero, and I think they use two different sweeteners.
Yeah, they probably use a sulfame K and one of the others together.
Yeah, because I know that they taste different. I don't drink very much of it anymore, but
But the interesting thing about Splenda is, chemically speaking, it's in a group called an organochloride. And the chemical companies want you to believe that Splenda is the only organochloride that is not a deadly pesticide. Except that, strangely, all Splenda factories are attached to the back end of places that make stuff like Raid Max.
really, seems like strange combination.
Yes. But I will tell
Better
you this.
living through chemistry.
Yes, better living through chemistry. I will tell you this from my own life. I had an apartment. Now, when you move into an apartment in Buffalo, there are things that you want to do, like clean the place before you start moving stuff in.
Yeah,
And just as a prophylactic, exterminate the place because you don't know
yeah.
what your prior tenants or maybe your surrounding tenants have got going on. So I did this, and what I did not know is that when I set up to do this, there was a box of cereal that had been left out in the open somewhere. Literally open. I exterminate the place. I don't really know anything about this. I come back through, clean everything up, put everything back to where it was supposed to be. About 2-3 weeks later, I open up this box of cereal, pour a bowl, and I start eating. It's like, this is weird. This tastes different, but like crazy sweet. Like somebody's got.
Oh, like the pesticides were sweet.
It's
Oh
like,
my God.
It's like this is like a sweet MSG going on. And I thought to myself, is it possible this is the roach spray?
Oh my. Well, there's no. I can't imagine why else you would try it. I mean, it's not really a condiment.
I didn't know, but I found out.
Yeah, I don't. You know, when I want soda, I use carbonated water and like a half a cup of juice.
Don't you go down to 8-Eleven and get some Faygo? Like the insane
Faygo.
clown posse?
No Faygo. Yeah, Greg always has grape juice in the house, and so I'll put like a half a cup of grape juice in carbonated water, and it's delicious. It's sweet enough. But all right, so we've covered politics, we've covered poison,
Sweet poison.
and now we have something. Do we finish talking about? Okay, I didn't think so. Go ahead.
Mr. Windsor, can you put this up on the screen here? Bin 9.
Number 9?
Yes.
Number 9? Number 9?
What's your interpretation of that statistic? That the suicides in the military keep going up?
I saw something on Sunday morning or one of those shows about the suicide rate there's the PTSD. There's something that they do now. They can do now with some kind of brain scan or something. I wish I could remember exactly what it was, but yeah, it's the military. They're, first of all, they are trained, they are brainwashed and trained into being able to kill people, and then sometimes they do kill people, and then they can't stop thinking about that.
So they're
And
not totally brainwashed. They're just partially, and then
Well, when they're out of the service, it's not being constantly.
so the brainwashing wears off.
Yeah, it kind of wears off. And they're in a regular world, and they take a look at their kids, and they remember, oh my God, I had to drop a bomb on a town, and there were
also,
children.
but
Yeah.
when they sign up for the military, they lose rights to their own body and can be used as experiments without their consent or knowledge.
Is that
so who
is
knows
that
why?
true?
Yeah, the
That's
sulfa
true.
drugs in the Navy. My grandfather died from that. And
Wow.
Your
when he was in the
grand- your
Navy in
Your
40s.
your grandfather was given drugs in the Navy,
Yeah, sulfa drugs. Yeah, they were experimenting with those. Yeah.
and how
And
did
I ruined his health.
how'd your grandfather die?
Well, he was also an alcoholic, so his liver blew up from drinking, but his health got really bad as a result of the sulfa drug
And
experiment.
the alcohol
that.
was
The alcohol was the cope.
self medication. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, is there a follow up to that information, or is it something?
Yeah, I mean, the way all the stories in the news media are presented is we got the statistic, we asked the Pentagon for a comment, the Pentagon said they're looking into it.
Of course they are. Yeah, there's a real problem. I wish I could remember that story that I heard, because there's some kind of a treatment that they can do now for these PTSD people that is very effective, and it's very effective with drug addiction too, and it's something to do with brain waves or something. God, I hate when I can't remember stuff, but they were talking about the rate and how high it is for people. And I mean, their relationships go south because, their wives don't know what to make of them. There's a lot of drinking, a lot of drugs. These are not humane things that these people have to do when they're in even if they're doing the radio or something, they're still involved, and they still see things that they shouldn't have to see. I mean, I can't even imagine going someplace and seeing bodies and people getting blown up and shot up. I mean, we don't have the imagination for that. We can think about what that must look like. We have seen movies where it happens, but then those people go home afterwards. When it's a war zone, they don't.
It's way different if you watch, like, say, even if you're watching a video of an actual death is a lot different than a staged production with makeup and props and special effects. It's a totally different essence.
Okay, so Mick had said something that, Mick, do you have any information that says that the service members are not being used as test subjects, or are you
Who
saying
knows?
that
They could be.
they shouldn't be used as test subjects? Because I'm reading that one entry you made.
Right. It could be interpreted two different
Yeah.
ways.
So
I think he just likes to be contrary quite often.
well,
Really.
anyway.
By the way, Vanessa and Mick have a rivalry.
Oh, we got beef like Tupac and Biggie.
Well, Mr. Rambo, let me just answer your one
Which one's
question.
Biggie?
Using liquid magnesium in pineapple juice, it causes the swelling to go away. It just takes anywhere from 7 to 14 days usually.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So yeah, I've often thought about what that would be like. I've written some poems about what it would be like for bombs to be dropping all around you and have kids that you have to make them not hear it, or make them protect them. And I thought we're we are lucky. We are lucky. And I mean, even though we've got a lot of gun violence and stuff, we're lucky here. We're not at war. We don't I mean, that's one thing I can actually say. I can understand Trump wanting to be an isolationist because it's scary.
Can't hear anybody.
Virginia's trying to join us.
Virginia, are you?
So we're gonna have a center square like the Hollywood squares now.
Okay. Am I in? Am I in?
I hear I hear your
yeah.
voice, but I don't see. Oh, I see your face on another screen, but I don't see
We're
you on
waiting
our
for Tom to put it on the main
on
screen.
our main screen.
Okay. All right. Okay.
But I just can't imagine what that's like. I can understand saying, you know what, I don't want to be involved, and because there's so much. Think of all those people in Russia and the Ukraine and Israel and wherever else that they're bombing. The West Bank. Think about walking down the street there, Richard. Can you even imagine what that must feel like?
The military people have the problem of an empathy gap and feeling like they matter. And when you feel that you don't matter and nobody cares and no one's even taking the time to look at things from your point of view, well, where does that lead you?
Tell us.
Oh,
Well,
the
the concept was, why are so many servicemen committing suicide? If nobody cares what you think and everybody's telling you you don't matter,
Then you feel insignificant.
and
As a veteran, I'd like to say something.
Okay, I'd like you to. I was going to ask you actually.
Well, part of the problem, there are many variables that play into this, but we also have to look at that the number of people serving in our military is like down between 1% and 5% of the general population.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't do the draft anymore. So that's part of the reason why. And so what's happening is that our military personnel are being deployed more than once into a battleground, sometimes 8 or 9 times into combat. Now, the average American doesn't know that. And as Mr. Walker just brought up, when you don't think people care about you, that's one thing you might do, that you might become forlorn and have to have a lot of despair. But I'd like to also say too, that we are the world leaders in how to treat PTSD. So these non-for-profits that are around that are saying that they can serve military people for PTSD are really doing military service people a disservice, because a 4-hour seminar, which is all most of them give their counseling help and PTSD, does a disservice to the servicemen. The best place to get treatment for PTSD is your VA medical centers.
But are they able to service all the people that need the help? I mean, from what I understand,
Yes.
this is something that they didn't even recognize until recently. It's
No, that is not true. That is not true. We have been treating, it was called different things for different conflicts. It was called shell shock. It was called all kinds of things. It was called different things. But we have been treating our servicemen at the VA medical centers for decades. That's the best place to get it done. And unfortunately, that is not being out into mainstream media. So do our VA medical centers need to be improved? Absolutely. Someone who is dependent on the VA medical center will tell you that I have had several concerns, but that had nothing to do with PTSD. We are the world leaders in PTSD. Other countries come to us and want our research. We do significant research in PTSD.
That's good. That's good to know. I mean, I only know what I see on different like light news shows. You know, I don't really know what goes
Right.
on with that. I mean, hello. So now we have Virginia and we have Celeste. I see Celeste in the on the bottom of the screen, and nice to see everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. So are we going to continue on this
Can
vote?
I talk to Virginia's point
Sure.
as a person who was raised in the military, a child of the military, and married into the military, not once but twice. So I'm a glutton for punishment. um, Part of when I heard the comment about suicide among military men, part of the things that our family went through, I as a child in a military family, and then I as a spouse of a military service person, and those combat tours of duty, oftentimes the burden of that experience is psychologically too much.
Right.
And we're asking people to make an ultimate sacrifice against something that could very well be in direct conflict with their values and how they want to live their life. And many of them don't want to even talk about it. Some will go to seek treatment, others they just won't. And there'll be times where veterans may convene among themselves. It can lead the road to addiction, which can lead to, attempts at suicide because that
Right.
life is overwhelming. And then when you have people who, as was mentioned earlier, seem to dismiss um, the great, I don't want to call it sacrifice, but commitment and commendability of people going into the service and being willing, to take up arms against something that is not especially rewarding to them anyway. And so it becomes a terrible emotional burden. And I know with not my first husband, because it was really difficult and he died young, but with my second husband, and we still have to talk about that with him, even though he doesn't live here now. We still communicate regularly about it. They were feeling devalued, and while
Demonized
the VA
sometimes.
was something that we attended,
Demonized.
we participated in, it does need more resources.
You know,
Yes,
and
right. And
Celeste, you
we
are
don't
100%
we
correct.
admire men in uniform, but we don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a hard thing. And now that we have someone, or we have people, who are so cavalier about service, like it's a given,
Mm-hmm.
you should be grateful and you don't need reward, or I mean, it's really it's really atrocious. And the new Secretary of Defense is like putting not one fox but 5 foxes in one hen house. The guy, if you read about him, um, he's a whack case,
Yeah.
and he
The
doesn't
guy from
believe
Fox News.
diversity and equity in the service.
Yeah. The guy
He
from
certainly
Fox
says
News.
women have no business being in the service, especially in combat. I
Oh.
mean, you could be a nurse, but that's about it.
Yeah.
But but
Yes, Pete
I just wanted to make
Hegseth,
one more point.
he's
I just wanted to
horrible.
make
He's absolutely horrible.
Okay.
And I
I
fear,
just wanted to make one more point on the suicide rate. I want to make one more point. So many times we find in the media that they point to the VA medical centers for reasons why there's so many suicides. We need to remember one thing is that service people do not come home to the VA medical center. They come back to the communities that they live in. And it's the communities that we live in that don't offer enough support to the servicemen that contribute greatly to the suicide rate. And now I'll be quiet. Thank you.
Well, that's a really good point, Virginia, because
Yeah.
you know, a lot of times guys that go into the
No, no, but
service,
I mean, that's really true.
yeah, because the guys that go into the service, they're getting away from sometimes not the best situations at home and the best neighborhoods, and so they're going out. They're trying to change their lives, and they're going out and doing service and coming back, and finding the same world they left behind. So
I mean, you look at what happened to our Vietnam veterans when they
Or one
when
worse, depending on,
when they returned home.
yeah.
You
yes.
look at our veterans that have been
Yeah.
deployed 8 or 9 times to Afghanistan, and you listen to the rhetoric that goes on in the communities and how they're treated.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This contributes to the suicide.
of course. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's sad. It's this.
Yeah. It's really pretty shameful.
Yeah, that's a good word.
Thank you.
Shameful.
Shameful. Yeah, shameful.
Yeah.
I have a different topic, not related to any of this.
Okay.
There's a new documentary out about psychics,
Uh-huh.
and critics love this documentary.
Uh-huh.
Essentially, what the filmmaker did is she went and asked a group, whole variety of psychics, can I bring my crew in, and with the approval of the client and, of course, the psychic, I will film it. Then I'll interview the client separately, and I'll interview you separately. Get all this footage, and I'll make a documentary out of it. It's fascinating. Here's two of my favorite scenes from the documentary.
Okay.
Some psychics are pet psychics. And people go to them and they say things like this. My cat goes to the door and meows. So I walk over, open up the door, and the cat will not go outside. It just sits there staring, and I close the door again, and that's it. What's going on? What is my cat trying to tell me? And the psychic goes, your cat is trying to tell you that you are conflicted about what you want from life. And the cat knows that.
Smart cat.
And the cat is saying to you, you're not alone. I'm like that too. Another thing I liked about the
I mean,
documentary.
you could basically say that to anybody, though. You know, you could say,
Well, that's
Yeah.
the whole point. Well, I don't know if it's the point, but what I got out of this documentary is psychics give very good practical advice, but using this other language. So, for example, there's in an interview, the filmmaker will always end the interview with the psychic by saying, how do you know when you're giving a reading that you're not just using your imagination? And I loved what this once, almost all the psychics say the same thing. I don't. And this one psychic said, that might be the case, but I got a question. Isn't imagination a form of knowledge? I mean, what can you say to that? It is a form of knowledge.
of course. Of course. And, you know, what's funny is when I used to drink a lot, about the fourth Manhattan, I would become psychic. I would see somebody in the room, and I would see somebody in the room, and based on, I guess, how they were dressed and how they held themselves and all this other stuff, I would just feel like I knew stuff about this person. And my friends loved when I would get psychic because they would follow me over to the table. I'd sit down and I'd say, look, I want to tell you something. And but the thing is, if you dissected it, there's a couple clues that I got from their person, and it could have been adaptable to any person. You know what I mean? It just so happened that I felt psychic when I was drunk, because I guess it lowered my inhibitions to sit down and talk to strangers about their lives, you know. But so I can see where that imagination thing can be very powerful, especially when you're looking at somebody and, let's say, just the way they're dressed. They're dressed very conservatively, or they're dressed really flashy, or they're, you know, or they They're
Yeah, so
sh-
so
you know,
they're giving off information.
they're giving off information like electronic stuff that's coming off of them, and 9 out of 10 times, Richard, and it was scary and very entertaining for all involved. I would tell them something that's they're going on in their life that I shouldn't have known. And my friends, when I quit, that was the thing my friends missed the most when I quit drinking, because I no longer was psychic.
So maybe the alcohol tapped into a part of your brain.
I think it was just my inhibitions went down, because I'm gregarious anyway. So but yeah, I can see how.
Well, I had a psychic stop me to talk to me about my mother.
Huh.
And it was very bizarre. I was at there's a hotel out by the airport.
Uh-huh.
I guess Buffalo Airport Hotel. I don't know. But anyway, I was there for an event in one of the banquet rooms, and the psychic fair was happening in the other side or something like that. You had to walk out and go past it.
Right.
And they had a book table out in the front. So I said, oh, I'm going over here. This brunch thing I was in is over. I'm going in here. So I'm looking at stuff, and they had every kind of thing out there. They had gifts and cards and crystals. And so I'm looking at a table because I'm like a junkie for trinkets and tchotchke.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked past one table, and it was a guy who looked like he was in a motorcycle gang, right? Not anybody I would say, my friend, can we have coffee? He looked scary.
Mm-hmm.
Older gentleman. And I was walking past this table, and I was looking at the cards he had said were for spirit guides. And he looked at me and he said, your mother wants you to know she's okay. And I looked at this dude and I'm like, are you guessing something here? Right? Because my mother was gone, mind you, but I wasn't prepared to have a strange Hell's Angel biker guy say anything to me about it. And so I said, well, okay, thank you. And then the next thing he said was, buckle down with the writing. Now I was started to trip.
That's really crazy. But you know what? Maybe
I started to trip.
Maybe it's because you were looking at the books and you had such an interest in the reading material that he made an assumption. I mean, you never know why people. That is freaky, though. That's a little freaky. The mother thing, yeah. I mean,
yeah. What I really think is that we talk about intuition a lot.
Yeah.
And I think psychic experiences are just people who have honed their intuition.
Yeah.
Because you can kind of, when you tell somebody, it doesn't have to be anything, but people, you go to these training classes or whatever, you can like train to be a psychic if you have the ability. But I think everybody has the ability. You can sense when something's wrong with your kids. You can sense when something's wrong with your partner or family member.
I notice if I'm a starer. I like to stare at people if they interest me. And I have found that some people, as soon as I lay a bead on them, they turn around.
Oh, you can look at the back of their head?
Yeah, and they turn around like they know. And other times I could stare at somebody, until Tuesday, and they won't have any idea that there's somebody paying attention to them.
On the pet psychic thing, I saw something talking about that, and the thing that made me laugh was the first thing that the pet psychic did was ask the owner of the pet for the pet's name. And it's like, well, if you can talk to the pet, if there's any word in English that the pet knows, it's what you call him to feed him.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. All right, so we're running out of time here. We got like 24 seconds left. I want to thank everybody.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to thank everybody for joining us. I'm sorry we didn't get to Virginia, and we had a nice conversation. We talked a lot. Everybody talked.
I was was late. I'm not upset. I'm not
Well,
upset.
I'm glad you came. Thank you. I haven't seen you in a while, and it's good to see
Yeah.
Celeste. It's good to see Nessa as usual, and of course my buddy here, James, who
The frenemies.
he shows up. I like that. All right. Thank you.